Shabbat Shalom, everyone. There are a lot of different ways and a lot of different reasons that rabbis will comment on a particular section of text, right? What might some of those ways or reasons be? What might catch a rabbi's interest as they're commenting on the Torah? Michal. If things are very, very detailed. If things are very, very detailed, then why might that catch the rabbi's interest?
The question is like, why are they so detailed?
Yeah.
Why is this trying to show something about either, well, in this case, the transaction, maybe, or something else that's really important?
Excellent. So Michal argues that when a section becomes very, very detailed, it catches the rabbi's eyes because they're, well, why is this section so detailed where other ones are not? Other ones are not. Good. Yes. What else?
I think sometimes when a section doesn't make sense and you're like, wait a minute, like last week, like, wait, how are they celebrating Pesach if the Torah hadn't been given yet?
Yeah.
Like if something chronologically.
Sometimes, look, there is a rabbinic phrase that says, Ein mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah. There's no chronology in the Torah, like everything is a little bit mishmashy. But to some degree, there has to be a flow of story and of time. And when things don't make sense in that, the rabbis have to jump in and try to make that make sense. Good. Neil.
How we connect that to today, whatever today is, if it's back with the sages,
Yeah.
if it's today because the Torah is a living document.
Yes. So the Torah is a living document, Neil says correctly, and part of what the rabbi's job is to figure out how to connect it to today, whatever today is. Maybe it was in the Middle Ages that they were writing, and that was today, or today, where we are. We have to find a way to connect it. Yeah.
I think also sometimes to justify something that seems also like not right or doesn't make sense.
Yeah, sometimes some apologetics, right? When things don't really resonate, especially in the modern world, right, where we look at the anachronisms that we have within the Torah of like, well, the way they lived back then and the way we live now, it's not the same. And so there has to be some sort of a harmonization of that or a justification of that. I would argue that anything that is different, anything that changes the flow, anything that stands out as being a different way of doing something, even, by the way, sometimes a different way of spelling something, right? Or a different way of phrasing something, stands out to the rabbis and begs the question, why? Why? And so that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to try to see a verse through the eyes of the rabbis and figure out why the Torah was written the way that it was, or if not that, what message is it trying to give us? So let's open to the beginning of this week's Parsha, which is on page 127 in the larger of the books that you have in front of you, the book that says Eitz Chaim on it. We find ourselves in the book of Genesis, and it is the end of Sarah's life. It is the end of Sarah's life. And we're going to look at the very first verse of this. We're going to talk a little bit more about it as we read, and Bryce will share a little bit about it as well. But let's look at the very first verse on page 127. We'll look at it in English, and then I'll tell you why it's a horrible translation. Sarah's lifetime, the span of Sarah's life, came to 127 years. Sounds innocuous enough, okay? But the Hebrew is a little bit different. Hayei Hayei Sarah, and it was that the life of Sarah was Mea Shana, 100 years, Ve'esrim Shana, and 20 years, Vesheva Shanim, and 7 years. Those were the years of Sarah's life. So what stands out in the difference between the Hebrew and the way that we've translated this into the English. Bernie.
It's as if there's three different pieces of her life.
Yeah. It seems like there's three different pieces of her life, right? The 100 years and the 20 years and the 7 years are divided up. And why does it seem that way?
Well, you've always said that there are no wasted words
Yes.
in the Torah. So there's got to be a reason why they wrote it that way.
For sure. There's no wasted words. The English actually undoes what the Hebrew does. The English says she lived 127 years. But that's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says she lived 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. Those were the years of her life. Now, the Hebrew could have just as easily said she lived 127 years. So this is odd. This is odd. And the rabbis, of course, picked up on this and said, why? Why was the word years repeated 4 times in the same verse? Right? If you look at it, Mea Shana, years, Esrim Shana, years, Shava Shanim, years, Shnei, that's also the word for years, Hayei Sarah. All right. Who wants to be a rabbi today and give an explanation for why this might be written in this way? By the way, Bernie, I think you already leaned into one explanation. Do you want to go a little further with that?
So I don't have all the years in my head, but I'm guessing that it's how old she was when she got married, maybe, to
Oh, okay.
it's how old before Ishmael was exiled, right, sent away, and then the total of her.
The total of her years. I like that explanation. It doesn't match up with the math, but I like the explanation. No, it's good. Right, it's good. I like that. I like where you're going with that. Anybody else want to add into this?
Wasn't she 100 when Esau was born?
She was not, yes, she was, I think she was in her 90s. I don't think she was quite 100 yet.
Yeah, so maybe that was like the first 100 where she didn't have kids and then
Possible. Possible. Anybody else? Well, let's see how the rabbis deal with this a little bit, right? The most famous commentator that we have is Rashi, right? Rashi lived in the Middle Ages in France, and he wrote, Shnei Hayei Sarah, Kulan Shavin Letova, right? That the years of Sarah's life, the word years is repeated because they indicate that they were all equally good. He's speaking more about the last one, by the way, right? So the first one was just, the first 3 are dividing it up, and the last one doesn't have a number to it. And he says they were all equally good. They were all equally good. What do we think he means by that? Do we live lives where all of our years are equally good typically? Probably not. Some years are better. Some years are worse. Some years we're better. Some years we're worse. Right? Human life is this up and down. And Rashi is saying actually that she was unique. She was unique, or if not unique, she was rare in her goodness, right? In her ability as a matriarch to live all of these years. She was consistent. She lived by her ethics. She lived by her values all of those years, as opposed to just some of them, as opposed to just some of the time. Michal. Yeah. Michal says she fulfilled her mission even when she did some things that are troubling. Even when she did some things that were troubling, they were still the right thing to do, even though they were hard. And so she lived by those values. Good. Anybody else want to take another crack at why these would be the way that they are? Go ahead.
I'm thinking almost like three. There's like a past, a present, and a future. Like Bernie indicated like three different sort of times in her own life, and it was like the past formed. You know, it was tough. She was in Grar. She was taken. She was taken hostage, or she was taken with against her will. We know about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then how she dealt with that, and how she dealt with all of these challenges that came about her, so that there could be this future. And
Yeah.
we're talking about this parsha pretty much after she was dead, and it's named for her, which is really what they talk about so much. Like, and I think sometimes too, like in the Ashkenazic tradition, anyway, we're named for those who preceded us with certain expectations that come with it. Like, may you be like them. And
Yeah. It is unusual for the Torah to speak so much about a woman, a matriarch in this way, right? Most of the story is patriarchal based. Most of our stories are focused on the men. That's not to say that we don't have the women in our story. They're there in every aspect of all of this. But it's unusual. It's even more unusual to have a Torah portion named after a female figure. To have this Torah portion be called Hayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, is very powerful. It's very powerful. And it shows intentionality by the rabbis to say, this is something unique and this is something special that we need to learn from. And so there are two different things that we see from the rabbis on how they deal with this parsha. So the first we've already sort of looked at, which is that each stage of Sarah's life contained and had its own sense of integrity. That as she went through these different phases, from childhood into later years, into adulthood, into older age, there was a purpose and a focus that she had that remained consistent. And that's difficult. Most of us don't do that. Most of us have very different ideas of what's important at different phases, at different stages within our lives, right? I guarantee you that our group of friends that are sitting up here, right, all of Bryce's friends, look at life a little bit differently than those of us who have been around the block a little more time, right? That's just natural. That's natural. And yet, for some reason, Sarah was able to see at all stages of her life that bigger picture that most of us miss. That's number one. But the second, and I think most important piece to all of this, and the rabbis pick up on this in many different ways, is that Sarah's life is measured in quality, not quantity. Now, you could argue maybe it's the opposite. Because the numbers are divided up, maybe we're focused more on the numbers. But the rabbis say no. It's not important that she lived for 127 years. It's important how she lived during those 127 years. Which is why the rabbis broke up, or the Torah broke up each of these sections. To say what we do with our lives is far more important than how long we have to live those lives. Rav Nachman in Kedushat Halevi says it very beautifully. Shesara grama chayim lishanim shela, which means that the Torah says it was Sarah who gave that life to those years, as opposed to the years to her life. It's what she did with those 127 years that made the difference and that made her so unique. It's for that reason that these rabbis argue that the word years is repeated 4 times. It's almost saying to us as we read it, What are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your time? That's the message that we get. And it's such a powerful message in today's day and age where it is so easy to waste time. Time is one of our most valuable resources. We talk about protecting resources in our world, in our lives. And the one that is probably the most precious is the one that we waste the most. Say it again? Whether it is. And we've all been there. We've all been there. I noticed it as I literally was talking about, reading this and preparing this sermon earlier in the week. And it was right before Shabbat. Shabbat hadn't started yet yesterday. And my wife happens to be up in Los Angeles this weekend. So I was alone, right? And I realized that I spent 45 minutes doom scrolling. Now, I don't usually do that, especially on a Friday afternoon, because there's so many things that I have to get done, right? There's so many things that I have to get done. And trust me, if I have time to sit, Debbie will find something on a Friday afternoon for me to do, right? That's not a question about that. But I had time. And what did I do, right? What did I do? And I actually, it stood out so poignantly to me, literally, as I've been writing this sermon this week about thinking about the time that we have, that when I put my phone down and I actually started to get ready for Shabbat, it dawned on me, I just spent the last 45 minutes doom scrolling, right? And that's not to say, Judaism is not opposed to all of this wonderful technology that we have, and frankly, there's a lot more study that people can do, a lot more connection to Judaism, a lot more access that people have had to the richness of our tradition because of all of this technology. But then this verse comes to say, but what are you doing with it? What are you doing with it? What are you doing with it? That's the repetition that we have there. And so, we look outside in sunny Southern California. We always have the opportunity to go out, to do things. Whether we do or not is a different story. But it's a little rainy. We have a great opportunity to enrich ourselves in ways that maybe we don't normally. We're here today on Shabbat. We're spending time together. We're learning together. We're celebrating a bar mitzvah. Folks, it doesn't get better than this. Let's enjoy it. Let's be in this moment. When we ask ourselves, what are we doing with our time? We're saying, we're here, celebrating our tradition and celebrating Bryce. Excellent. Excellent use of our time. Let's continue to find ways to do that, not only during this Shabbat, but in the weeks ahead. Shabbat Shalom.